Namaste, Dandavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are also giving our most humble honor to Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for so kindly giving us this translation and commentary of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we're also giving our honor to Srimati Radharani. Yadhi seva vanchitasya ma yasya kripaya vayam lepema sarvam prapnumha prayojanam damni Shri Bhagavat Pade Krishna sambandhi sarvam cha yadi na jani mahetu tam astadasasu sahasreshu shlokanam Bhagavat oktishu radharanimna vindamatada nisfalam Bhagavat adhyayanam radhikaya kripam vina vyartasyat sarva parishrama. If we are cheated out of serving that personality whose mercy awards us everything we need, including residence in the Lord's holy Dham and all things connected to Krishna, and if we cannot understand or discover Radharani within the 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, then our study of Srimad Bhagavatam has been pointless. Without the mercy of Srimati Radharani, all our efforts are in vain. Hare Krishna. So we are reading Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 24, Text 34. Namha Pankaja Nabhaya Bhuta Sukshmendriyatmane Vasudevaya Shantaya Kutastaya Svarochise. My Lord, you are the origin of the creation by virtue of the lotus flower which sprouts from your navel. You are the supreme controller of the senses and the sense objects, and you are also the all-pervading Vasudev. You are most peaceful, and because of your self-illuminated existence, you are not disturbed by the 6 kinds of transformations. Purport. The Lord as Garbhodakshai Vishnu lies in the ocean of Garbha within this universe, and from his navel the lotus flower sprouts. Lord Brahma is generated from that lotus flower, and from Lord Brahma the creation of this material world begins. As such, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Garbhodakshai Vishnu is the origin of the material senses and sense objects. Since Lord Śiva considers himself to be one of the products of the material world, his senses are under the control of the Supreme Creator. The Supreme Lord is also known as Rishikesh, or Master of the Senses, which indicates that our senses and sense objects are formed by the Supreme Lord. As such, he can control our senses and out of his mercy engage them in the service of the Master of the Senses. In the conditioned state, the living entity struggles in this material world and engages his senses for material satisfaction. However, if the living entity is graced by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can engage these very senses in the service of the Lord. Lord Śiva desires not to be misled by the material senses, but to engage always in the service of the Lord, without being subject to contamination by materialistic influences. By the grace and help of Lord Vasudeva, who is all-pervading, one can engage his senses in devotional service without deviation, just as the Lord acts without deviation. The words Shantaya Kutastaya Svarochise are very significant. Although the Lord is within this material world, he is not disturbed by the waves of material existence. However, the conditioned souls are agitated by 6 kinds of transformations. Namely, they become agitated when they are hungry, when they are thirsty, when they are aggrieved, when they are illusioned, when they grow old, and when they are on their deathbed. Although conditioned souls become very easily illusioned by these conditions in the material world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the Supersoul Vasudeva, is never agitated by these transformations. Therefore, it is said here, Kutastaya, that he is always peaceful and devoid of agitation because of his prowess, which is described herein as Svarochise, indicating that he is illuminated by his own transcendental position. In other words, the individual soul, although within the illumination of the Supreme, sometimes falls down from that illumination because of his tiny position. And when he falls down, he enters into material conditional life. The Lord, however, is not subject to such conditioning. Therefore, he is described as self-illuminated. Consequently, any conditioned soul within this material universe can remain completely perfect when he is under the protection of Vasudeva, or when he is engaged in devotional service. Text 35. Sankarshanhaya sukshmaya durhantayantakaya cha namo vishva prabodhaya pradyumnayantar atmane. My dear Lord, you are the origin of the subtle material ingredients, the master of all integration as well as the master of all disintegration, the predominating deity named Sankarsana, and the master of all intelligence known as the predominating deity Pradyumna. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. The whole universe is maintained by the integrating power of the Supreme Lord, who is known in that capacity by the name Sankarsana. The material scientists may have discovered the law of gravity, which maintains the integration of objects within the material energy. Yet the master of all integration can create devastation by the integrating blazing fire emanating from his mouth. A description of this can be found in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, wherein the universal form of the Lord is described. The master of integration is also the destroyer of this world by virtue of his disintegrating energy. Sankarsana is the master of integration and disintegration, whereas Pradyumna, another feature of Lord Vasudeva, is responsible for universal growth and maintenance. The word Sukshmaya is significant because within this gross material body, there are subtle material bodies, namely mind, intelligence, and ego. The Lord and his different features, Vasudeva, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Sankarsana, maintain both the gross and subtle material elements of this world. As mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, the gross material elements are earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and the subtle material elements are mind, intelligence, and ego. All of them are controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. And this will be further explained in the following verse. Text 36. Namo Namo Niruddhaya Rishi Kenandriyatmane Namha Paramahamshaya Purnaya Nibritatmane. My Lord, as the supreme directing deity known as Aniruddha, you are the master of the senses and the mind. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you again and again. You are known as Ananta as well as Sankarshan because of your ability to destroy the whole creation by the blazing fire from your mouth. Purport. Rishikeshendriyatmane. The mind is the director of the senses, and Lord Aniruddha is the director of the mind. In order to execute devotional service, one has to fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore, Lord Śiva prays to the controller of the mind, Lord Aniruddha, to be pleased to help him engage his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.34, Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru. The mind has to be engaged in meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord in order to execute devotional service. It is also stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha. From the Lord come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, if Lord Aniruddha is pleased, he can help the mind engage in the service of the Lord. It is also indicated in this verse that Lord Aniruddha is the sun god by virtue of his expansions. Since the predominating deity of the sun is an expansion of Lord Aniruddha, Lord Śiva also prays to the sun god in this verse. Lord Krishna, by his quadruple expansion, Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, is the Lord of psychic action, namely thinking, feeling, willing, and acting. Lord Śiva prays to Lord Aniruddha as the sun god, who is controlling deity of the external material elements which constitute the construction of the material body. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the word Paramahamsa is also another name for the sun god. The sun god is addressed herein as Nibritatmane. Nibritatmane, which indicates that he is always maintaining the various planets by manipulating the rainfall. The sun god evaporates water from the seas and oceans and then forms the water into clouds and distributes it over the land. When there is sufficient rainfall, grains are produced, and those grains maintain living entities in each and every planet. The sun god is also addressed herein as Purna, or complete, because the rays emanating from the sun have no end. For millions and millions of years since the creation of this universe, the sun god has been supplying heat and light without diminution. The word Paramahamsa is applied to persons who are completely cleansed. When there is sufficient sunshine, the mind remains clear and transparent. In other words, the sun god helps the mind of the living entity to become situated on the platform of Paramahamsa. Thus, Lord Śiva prays to Aniruddha to be kind upon him, so that his mind will always be in the perfect state of cleanliness and will be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Just as fire sterilizes all unclean things, the sun god also keeps everything sterilized, especially dirty things within the mind, thus enabling one to attain elevation to the platform of spiritual understanding. Text 37. Svargapvarga dvaraya nityam suchi sadhenama namo hiranya viryaya chaturhotraya tantave. My Lord, O Aniruddha, you are the authority by which the doors of the higher planetary systems and liberation are opened. You are always within the pure heart of the living entity. Therefore, I offer my obeisances unto you. You are the possessor of semen, which is like gold, and thus in the form of fire, you help the Vedic sacrifices, beginning with Chaturhotra. Therefore I offer my obeisances unto you. Purport. The word Svarga indicates a position in the higher or heavenly planetary systems, and the word Apavarga means liberation. Those who are attached to the karma khandiya activities described in the Vedas are actually entangled in the three modes of material nature. Bhagavad Gita therefore says that one should be above the dominion of fruitive activities. There are different kinds of liberation or mukti. The best mukti is engagement in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Not only does Lord Aniruddha help fruitive actors by elevating them to the higher planetary systems, but he also helps the devotee engage in devotional service by dint of his inexhaustible energy. Just as heat is the source of material energy, the inspiration of Lord Aniruddha is the energy by which one can engage in executing devotional service. Text 38. Nama orja ishetraya pataye yagyaretase triptidaya chajivanam namasarva rasatmane. My Lord, you are the provider of the Pitralokas, as well as all the demigods. You are the predominating deity of the moon and the master of all three Vedas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you because you are the original source of satisfaction for all living entities. Purport. When the living entity is born within this material world, especially as a human being, he has several obligations unto the demigods, unto the saintly persons, and unto living entities in general. As enjoined in the Shastras, Devarshi Bhutapta Nirnam Pitranam. Thus one has an obligation to one's forefathers, the previous hierarchy. Lord Śiva prays to Lord Aniruddha to give him strength so he can become free from all obligation to the Pittas, demigods, general living entities, and saintly persons, and completely engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. As stated, Devarshi Bhutapta Nirnam Pritrinam Na King Karo Naya Mrini Charajan Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam Gato Mukundam Parihritya Kartam. Bhagavatam 11.5.41. One becomes free from all obligations to the demigods, saintly person, pittas, ancient forefathers, etc., if one is completely engaged in devotional service of the Lord. Lord Śiva therefore prays to Lord Aniruddha to give him strength so that he can be free from such obligations and entirely engage in the Lord's service. Soma, or the predominating deity of the moon, is responsible for the living entity's ability to relish the taste of good food through the tongue. Lord Śiva prays to Lord Aniruddha to give him strength so that he will not taste anything but prasad of the Lord. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur has sung a verse indicating that the tongue is the most formidable enemy among all the senses. If one can control the tongue, he can easily control the other senses. The tongue can be controlled only by eating prasad offered to the deity. Lord Shiva's prayer to Lord Aniruddha is meant for this purpose, Tripti Dhaya. He prays to Lord Aniruddha to help him be satisfied by eating only prasad offered to the Lord. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 39 on Friday. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Guru Dev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees, Sama Bhaktivedanta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Nrsimhapali Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju Ki Jai. Ganga Mai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Kiri Govardhan, Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai, Shamkund Radhakund Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Scientific Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Institute Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Nitai Gauda Premanandi Hari Hari Hari
Hari
Bo.
Bol.
Jai Shrimati Umadevi Dasi Ki Jai.
Jai
Hare
Gurudev.
Krishna.
Sripad Krishna Keshav Prabhu ji ki jai. Dhanyavad.
Dhanavat Stiri. Hari Bo.